Hello, and welcome back to my tete-a-tete podcast, the Panti Personals, which, to be honest, is really just an excuse for me to get dressed up, do the hair, and get out and meet someone other than my long-suffering husband, Penny the dog, or the lockdown kitten Crayon. Well, he's really a full-blown cat by now. And keeping me company today is a man that I actually can't believe I haven't met before. It's filmmaker, musician, and general Renaissance man, Myles O'Reilly. Myles is known for his gorgeous music docu-videos, I might call them, with artists like Villagers, Imelda May, Lisa Hannigan, Vagabonds, and of course the lovely Lisa Hannigan. And that's her track that you can hear in the background now. And Myles, you actually made the video for that track, so that's a bit of serendipity there. Myles is also one half of the music show This Ain't No Disco with Donal Dineen. And he has curated a stage at Body and Soul Festival for the previous 7 years until Miss Corona put a hiatus on that. And if that weren't enough, Myles is very much a music maker himself. He started out as the band Juno Falls, which was effectively just him, and whichever mates were available at the time. That was as a young fella, but these days he's making dreamy ambient music albums under the moniker Indistinct Chatter, but more of that later. Myles, I'm going to make it easier on you by asking you questions about somebody else first, because I've absolutely fallen in love with your neighbours. Because you made a video recently for a crowded house, and it's a great track called To the Island. You can watch it on YouTube. But in the video, and the video is in your style, it's a music video, but there's a bit of documentary in there too. And they're neighbours of yours, is it?
Yeah,
Elsie and Eddie, and they're amazing.
Every morning when we wake up, there's a kiss and then a prayer. And then during the day, Eddie would always bring me home, or if we were together, pick a rose off a tree to give it to me.
Yep, they're right next door. We've been there for 13 years, and we got to know them straight away.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly inspiring, both 80 plus, they're both in their 80s.
Telling each other how much we love them.
She's my queen, and I'm her king.
Well, of course, I just fell immediately in love with Elsie because she's a glamour puss. The makeup, the hair, the outfits and everything.
Yeah.
And then he's so dapper.
Yeah.
And then the sort of documentary element of the video really tells the story of their relationship, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
They're dancing in the video at one point. You know, it's beautiful on so many things, but they speak about, love being a commitment rather than a feeling. And as a married woman, I'm learning that. But also there's some odd and beautiful things, like all the stuff they have on their wall, like from newspapers and...
Well, they're quite religious, but they still have a newspaper cutting of a picture of a black hole, the first picture of a black hole.
Well, and that's another thing I love about them. At one point, they casually say, we don't do television.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wish I had the confidence to just never look at television. And there's something gorgeous about it.
Yeah.
The world is beyond us. It's too enormous. But on the island...
Now, to bring it back to yourself, and I get the impression that you're less comfortable talking about yourself than you are talking about other things.
I've spent a long time behind the camera looking at other personalities because I find it very hard to be a personality myself. I'm not really able to vocalize who I am. I know who I am. I'm a very confident person, I think. I'm just a little bit of a recluse who's very good at being social.
But that's interesting, though, because, you went into music first. I mean, film and video, in a way, took over for a long time. And now you're back making a lot of music now.
Yeah, it was a tricky thing to be... when I would have called myself a professional musician. And I've worked with so many since I stopped being a professional musician that I see that they're all undergoing the same very tricky process of kind of balancing the being on with the being at home, And the more I was on, the more I wanted to be at home. So You know, back in the day when I was a younger man, I should have been really going for it, but instead I just wanted to hibernate the whole time because it was so much effort to be out doing the music thing and entertaining publicly. So that's why I stopped, essentially. I couldn't do that part.
Well, you know, the subject of alter egos comes up, you know, with me quite a lot, as you might imagine. See, I think that's always the answer. You create a public persona for performing and all of that, and you get to be your other self, your own self, all the rest of the time.
Oh my God, you could explain that to my wife, because she's like, why did you put out that Instagram video of you talking and showing our house? And like, I don't like it. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to be a persona now. I think I know what to do now, is to separate the two. And she's like, but who is this other Myles? This is not my husband, you know?
That is so funny, because my husband is like pathologically private.
Yeah.
Like, he never wants his picture anywhere. He never wants anything. He doesn't have any social media except for WhatsApp. And even that, the WhatsApp picture is almost never of himself.
Just
a
a generic,
it'll
like,
be the cat, or it'll just be black, or whatever. Like, he's pathologically private. So,
same as my wife. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it sounds like. You know, and he'll give out to me, why did you put on Twitter that you know, that you made a chicken? You know, like, and I'm like, that's not, you know, top secret government information, you know. Whereas to me, I don't think anything of it.
No, you're serving chicken
but I
for people.
choose what to reveal.
Yeah, exactly. Carefully.
Yeah.
And instinctually, I guess if you're a performer, you need to have that confidence in the alter ego.
Well, and also, you know, especially if you're a musician or something, and in the kind of stuff that I do on stage too, I'm just telling stories about my own life or my experience, because I feel like I'm not an expert in anything else, but I can tell you exactly what I felt about something. So it is necessarily part of the product is to reveal parts of yourself. You just have to choose which part.
Yeah, exactly.
So have you always been shy, the word you would describe?
Yeah, very shy, I guess. I don't think I actually had any social interaction up until I was 5.
None?
First ones, none at all. No.
You like no siblings or neighbors?
No, nothing. Just myself and my mother. Yeah, it's very. In many ways, it was a good thing.
Yeah,
I see how it works for me. I know that 5-year-old Myles is still here.
Yeah.
And 5-year-old Myles appreciates those 5 years, you know.
That's sweet.
That's great.
Now, because your father had died when you were...
My mother had drastically left my father, and so I was denied even seeing him in those 5 years, in my first 5 years of my life. And that continued. I never really got to know my father. There's another kind of worms there. But no, I'm very appreciative of the world she made for me in those 5 years. I have a memory of the smells, of the feeling of comfort, of the feeling of love. And she was a highly creative woman. And I'm sure as a baby, I would have sat on her lap and watched her make a dress or watched her paint or, you know. And
so, but your father has passed since.
He had passed, yes.
And you never really got to know him?
I never really got to know him, no. We would have spent some weekends together.
And how old were you when he passed away?
I was 27 when he passed away, but I was still in his eyes a child, so he would have still not had... I wouldn't have had the adult conversations that I wished I could have had, you know, because he still treated me like a teenager, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know... I have adult conversations with my father.
Go on.
But to me, he's still my dad, and to him, I'm still...
It's funny, right?
Yeah.
And that's necessary to be... It's like, why go deeper than that? But obviously, now I think about those things. You're right. It's like, now I wish I could just... If something went terribly wrong, I used to run to my mother. And I wish I could have, in some instances, ran to him, but I just didn't have that opportunity.
Well, we're going to talk about your mother a little later on, because she's been very important in the last while. But it's funny, you know, I think all kids nearly run to their mothers, or certainly in the traditional family that most of us grew up in. So there were certain things that I went to my dad about, but they were very defined what those were.
I guess.
So where were you growing up, by the way?
What were they? What was one of the things?
money.
Okay.
Money things. Like, for example, my dad, always been very supportive and all of that, but he had no frame of reference for my life or what I did for a living. Like drag and nightclubs and all that. Hadn't a clue. And so I think, he showed little or no interest, not because I'm bringing you bad, just because it was out of his ken.
Yeah.
And so my dad was delighted when I opened a bar. Even though my dad's he's not a drinker at all. He's hardly ever crossed the door of a pub in his life, but he understands what a pub is.
Brilliant.
And he understands what a business is and all that. So,
that must have been great for you. Oh my God.
Yeah. And to be able to sort of, here's 4 walls and a business and him understand what that was.
Great.
Yeah, that is lovely. So where were you growing up?
We escaped to 4 or 5 different homes until my mother finally settled with a man that she liked, and that was in Blessington, more or less, for all my childhood.
I did notice the way you phrased that. Said it was a man that she liked. Blessington. Well, that's a nice part of the world.
It is. It's very countryside. And my sister came along then. So Anya. And we grew up in the countryside. And Anya has since now, she presents the show Eco Eye on RTE. She's like a super environment warrior. And she hates me saying that. But we have a deep connection with nature up until our mid-teens. Came to Dublin.
And so when did the music thing come along?
Basically, when I knew I had a lot more knowledge, I was very experienced. When I was 15, 16, 17, I had a lot of knowledge about music. There was a confidence that came with that. And I was terrible in school. So I was like, well, look, I'm really knowledgeable about this thing. I'm just going to do that. That's all I want to do. And I didn't do my leaving cert And my mother was absolutely fine with that too. She was like, whatever makes you happy. Yeah, it was just that I listened to a lot of stuff. And I wasn't as fortunate as most musicians that became professional because they had other friends that they had a community of musicians growing up, or in school they might have had the one friend who was also learning guitar and they could bounce off each other, and I never had that. And I still find it strange that I did end up playing professionally without a community of musicians around me,
But so how did the Juno Falls thing come along? Because if you look on Wikipedia or something, it writes of Juno Falls as a band, but essentially it was you and whichever of your mates happened to be around when you needed.
It was, I had a best friend who learned how to play bass guitar just so that I could have him on tour with me, or it was just whatever, and he rudimentary skills, but it worked, and I could have my best friend on tour with me.
And so what years are we talking here?
I say it all came to an end in 2010, but for 10 years I'd been climbing that ladder, so to speak. And I think towards the end of it, having the Late Late Show, there was like a Late Late Show performance and a Podge and Raj, and we did quite well in terms of The Voices was another one, and
you had a record deal and all of that.
It
was full on music business
full
stuff.
On. I got to meet my heroes, and then I just decided
heroes like who?
Well, Elbow, do you know the band Elbow? I was living in Dingle at the time, and I got to meet quite a lot of heroes when Other Voices blazed in.
Course, yeah.
But then, especially when I was asked to play Other Voices, then I knew I could set up the session in the hotel room and invite everybody up. But I got to meet Elbow at one of those sessions where we had good chats, and they were on the label I had just signed to. They were also privy to the knowledge that the label was going down. I was introduced to the rest of the band as Myles has just joined our label, and they all kind of let a little shrug, and I understand now why, and they were like, well, we've just gone to Universal, who's your manager? And they were very caring, but they never actually came out with it that your label's is going down, so 2 months later it did. But I got to hang out with Elbow. They were my heroes at the time.
And Paul Weller,
of course, who myself and Declan O'Rourke were on that, and Duke Special were on V2 Records, and I think label buddies came up a lot. The term, in a label, they do like their artists hanging out. So if you've got a label buddy, it's a good thing because you're recording each other, and acknowledging each other, and you're going under the same management, and it's easy for them to nurture and develop collaboration and things. So I'm glad to see that Declan O'Rourke has, it's been 10 years since then, but Declan O'Rourke and Paul Weller have just put out an album. But to have that kind of close-knit friendship is quite beautiful. And I still have a lot of those from that era of people who haven't gone away.
Is it true that you are, when getting into all that, you're a bit naive about the music industry, and like most young musicians
like most young musicians, and I see a lot of, it's a treacherous territory for a lot of musicians who haven't played a lot or haven't gigged a lot and don't understand the business side of it. If you go in with a big heart and going, I just want to make music and I don't care to who, you're most vulnerable then, because you look up to the label people, you think they're great. It's quite cutthroat at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Also, what can happen once you get your record deal, you can trust what they say about you, and you can be put with producers who are brilliant and have recorded your heroes, and they give you advice, and little bits of little words can be the wrong words to just push you off course. That's not yourself. Yeah. And that happens, I think, 99% of the time. If you're not listening to your heart when you're in a label contract, if you don't actually know why you're singing those words or what makes you cry, if you've been doing too much thinking about getting a record deal and suddenly you have a record deal and you've lost that contact with yourself, you're essentially doomed.
You're probably not following Jedward on Twitter, but they are, echoing all of this at the moment. They're taking the music industry down from the inside. It's very fun to watch.
I actually love the lads. Oh my God, they're doing well, aren't they, on Twitter? I love that people get them.
Yeah, no, people really get them now. And they are, really taking down Simon Cowell and the machine from the inside. It's
and a part of their
watch.
Growth, isn't it? It's a part of them also moving on, and just, I love that they can keep evolving past that, because they're so strong. They're so present, but they can grow and keep being a strong tree.
They used to be Ireland's little secret, and now everybody's on board. So tell me, you had a fairly successful 10 years there, in the belly of the music industry beast and all of that. But then, so how did you transition then into the music video stuff, which you've been very successful at? I mean, the list of people you've made videos for is pretty incredible.
Thank you. I was sitting down one day watching a film, actually, and I love space and I love science and all these. I grew up with those kind of books, and there was a film called "In a Wild Blue Yonder," which is a Werner Herzog film. Oh, great, you know it.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack was done by Ernst Reisiger. It was composed and scored by Ernst Reisiger, but it had some beautiful Sardinian folk singers on it. It had lots of avant-garde cello and lots of typical soundtrack moments. But I realized that I was crying watching the film because of the music and the power that the music had when it had adopted the visual, or almost the visual had adopted the music. I honestly think that Werner Herzog edited that film to the music, so he was really jamming with music. So I had to go this is incredible. He's a Hollywood director. Well, he wasn't for a long time. Had edited to music this 1 hour story about space, and existential story about humanity. And I had to go through all his films. And I realized that in all of Werner Herzog's films, he's collaborating with music. And I'd always had a tendency to film things, or I loved photography, but it was just never enough, and digital cameras were just coming around then, and I was doing bits and pieces of stuff, and we all are now on our phones, on Instagram. But I was doing that 10 years ago, and when I realized that if I just do it to music, it felt so much more powerful. And then I realized maybe that's why I've been loving music so much. And I think when the two collided, I knew I had to do that. Also, I was very insecure about my own why I was actually playing music. What am I doing this for? Where's this going? And there was no real validation or feedback or anything as much as I had when I did my first video, and I got you know, we all want a bit of love, you know, from the internet. But when I put up my first video, and it was actually with Rónán O Snodaigh, the love and the validation, the feeling I got from that. What was the first video? It was a song of Rónán's that I loved. I did a video with him down in Dingle. I met Rónán down there 10 years ago.
Rónán O Snodaigh.
Rónán O Snodaigh.
Yes, we're going to be hearing from.
Yeah, and it was just for fun, but the feeling that I got putting it out into the public just was way better than the feeling of being a musician and playing. There was also another satisfaction that came with making videos, is that I never had to repeat myself. I never had to play the same song.
Yes, yeah.
And I never had to be, like you said, on. I never had to be on, you know? And suddenly I could fall back into the kind of like the 5-year-old me who never had to say anything or interact with anybody, or I could just watch and observe and disappear. And people would, Lisa Hannigan would say, like, how did you film that? We didn't think you were in the room, you know, because I could just become like 2 inches tall and witness everything. And I thought to myself, like, if I can keep doing this, I will.
Well, that's a magic trick, because you're not a small man.
No, I'm not. I'm 6'5". I'm not. So it's funny. It's like the amount of times I've been told by clients where I'm in studio environments like this, and they're like, where were you? Oh, I've been here the whole time, you know, filming their little golden moments where they're being themselves. And sometimes that could be tricky too. They're like, how long were you here? Did you film everything? No,
because you like the sort of Herzog fly on the wall
thing. So like it came at the same time. It was like realizing what cinema verite was, and the whole German movement, French movement, and realizing what that was. It was like, oh, that's 5-year-old Myles, you know. But it's funny because to hear you talk now, you're describing a person who wants to be alone and you know, to be in a way you know, just a lone figure creator or doing. But in actual fact, you're actually a collaborator. You know, you're constantly collaborating with different people. Yeah. So there's some sort of tension there or something, isn't there? Yeah, there is. You know, I'm glad you have found that. You know, because I haven't even done enough thinking about that. Really, now coming back into music and coming into performing again, I realised that okay, if I'm able to do this, then I do have the skill for collaboration and listening and teamwork and all that. And, you know, all I've been is a lone wolf for 10 years, but I have whatever.
Even a lone wolf runs in a pack.
Well, nice. Nice. I like that. Yeah.
Well, you know, part of me wants to hate you because I can see that during the pandemic and the lockdown, you've been very productive and creative. And I started out the lockdowns being all doer, and I totally lost that energy. And I think I'm just in survival mode or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have sort of felt at times, God, I wish I was one of those kind of more lone type persons. And then maybe I'd be getting more done. Yeah. I think I need interactions and be bouncing off people, and I need to bump into some funny guy on the street to be inspired by something.
Yeah. And you're not
has
not
lockdown
alone.
suited you?
No, you're not alone there, obviously. Like everyone I've met has suffered. It's funny. It's like, it's the stress of it. I knew immediately what was coming. Like in the first 2 weeks were the most painful for me. I knew immediately what was coming in terms of survival. I had to keep busy and do whatever I can to be to just keep coming back to it. But 5-year-old Myles, keep like painting and drawing. Everyone lent on that immediately, and it petered away just to like staring at the wall and like if you're lucky enough to have a field, just you're looking at it for like way longer than you ever would, and look at the sky. But I knew like that wasn't going to work, so I concocted a lot of plans just to stay creative in my house. And I like an audience too, funnily enough, you know, and I had it there on the internet. So
I mean, you know, in a way, you know, art needs an audience.
Yeah.
Because really, if there's nobody looking at it, it's just color on a canvas.
Yeah.
It makes me feel to look at it to turn it into a painting.
Exactly. Like, and the reason why I'm sure doing these podcasts for you is just so healthy, is that we are giving to an audience. I mean, I guess the feelings I get back knowing that there's other lives appreciating the song I've presented to them, you know, and how that's affected them, and hearing back messages like that.
You've also taken to a model which I know quite a few people who have, but I find a little terrifying, and that's the Patreon thing. So basically, people subscribe to your art in advance, and they pay a few euros a month or whatever, and then you can, whoever you're paying to provides you with podcasts or music or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so you're using that model for making the videos and that. But to me, I'm sort of terrified of it, because then you have, you're basically signing a contract saying, I will produce.
Yeah.
And you will get this every week or whatever
it's
it
funny.
is.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. A lot of people have the same concerns about it, especially with the poet. I'm great friends with the poet Stephen James Smith, who is like built for it, but won't go near it. He's like, no way. I've had a unique experience where, up until the pandemic, I was presenting artists to people, and my paragraph on the front of the Patreon would be, I shall find you a new artist every week. I'll have a little backpack and a camera, and I'll travel the country, and I'll find you somebody to listen to and who you love. And it's changed drastically since, and I've had to edit that paragraph in the pandemic. Now it's like, I will just make you a film of any description that is loosely around music you're going to like.
Well, two things about it is, one is, it shows you that you have, over the years of hard working life, really developed an audience, because not a lot of people would have a successful Patreon based on that contract.
It's true. There's a lot of people who really, really, really love music, and I actually started a documentary that I'm maybe finished in 10 years from now, where I'm for the last 6 years, I've been interviewing music lovers. And I don't find them that often, but like people who live and breathe music, who go to every concert, and some might be regarded as sycophants or something because they're always in the front row of the audience, But I'm essentially one of them, Yeah, that'll be an interesting one when it's finished.
Now, your work really does straddle a kind of, your video work, this thing between documentary and music video almost, and it's very interesting, and it's kind of your own space in a way. There's not many people working in that sort of crossover, really.
Yeah.
And of course, now I have a vested interest in bringing up the next one, which is the video essential services, which is, of course, the music that is your own music, because after leaving the band and the past, and then going into the videos and all that, and then you started making your own music, but it's ambient. Yeah. So the moniker you use for your ambient music is genius, Indistinct Chatter, which when I read it first, I had that thing where I know that from somewhere, but I couldn't quite place it. And it wasn't until John was the one who was like, oh, that's from the subtitles in a video when they're in a bar or something. But I read that you collected that name ages ago.
Yes, I had it for ages, yeah. Because I realised I did listen to a lot of Indistinct Chatter. Actually, I think there's a whole ethos. It's almost religious. It's like you don't listen to ambient music, you hear it, And so we constantly hear ambient music. It's all around us all the time, and yeah, that's what the movie industry calls it. Is, well, ambient sounds of anywhere where there's people. It's Indistinct Chatter.
But it's so genius. Yeah. But I was struck by the fact that you said that you had collected it and sort of stuck it in your back pocket, so to speak, for years, and that you'd even offered it to other people along the way, who were looking for names for a band, and none of those idiots took it. Thank God. And also because I'm a drag queen, and drag queens all collect drag queen names.
Oh, brilliant! Okay.
So we have Facebook groups and WhatsApp, and we're always like sending each other. And there's always a couple that you keep, and you think, I ever meet a young drag queen who's looking for a good name,
Yeah, it's cool.
So there's a,
it's like
you
a
always
perfect
have
portrait,
one.
It's like,
it is, and it's so satisfying when you find one that works on different levels, and the pun is great, and that, like, it's very satisfying. But so under that moniker, Indistinct Chatter, one of the tracks you made a video for and had out during the pandemic is and also available for everyone to look at on YouTube. It's called Essential Services, and I'm biased towards it, of course, because my own lovely panty bar is in it. So tell us about the video.
It was my first Patreon video where I had to just say, look, this is my music. You know, it was the most lockdown of lockdowns, which was January. It was dark and it was raining most of the time, and so I couldn't call around even to somebody's garden and film them there, which is I've been doing for ages. So yeah, it was just my music, you know. And I was creating an album of ambient songs, very reflective of my childhood, reflecting on my childhood. And I was listening to the mixes walking around, and it just suited me at the time to film a lot of footage of architecture. And then I realized that there was this thing where I'd seen online a lot of people. Dublin was very quiet, way more quiet than it is now. Even though it was lockdown 5 then, I mean, it was lockdown 5 then. Like, in visually, it was like there was no cars anywhere apart from taxis and Deliveroo guys. But I realized that there was a lot of content online that didn't show Dublin was locked down. I mean, there was really great photographers that I love were trying to film, were trying to take pictures of lockdown Dublin, and they couldn't do it. So I wonder what it was about 2 dimensions that could get across that this is a city upset. It was just in walking around, really buzzing around, listening to my music and having to walk anyway because I go mental otherwise, looking at streets, listening to my music, that I realised, well, it's the open shops, it's the ones that are open that seem the saddest, because they highlight the fact that it's like this is in between the hours of 9 and 5, you know, but the street's empty. So when I had a shot of an empty street, but if there was like a essential service, like a hardware shop that was open, you'd realise, whoa, well, this isn't 6 in the morning. And immediately when that clicked, I was like, oh, I have to make a video for this.
It's
now.
really beautiful. It's sort of mesmerizing. It's all, you know, slow pans and
yeah, it has to be floaty.
Yeah,
I didn't want an ego in it either because I just wanted us to feel floaty. And I never usually like those camera tactics because I think they're not real. I like a heartbeat and a movement. It's a personality and a tempo and a kind of in a session or if in a running scene. If it's not perfect, if it's jaggedy running scene, you get that, you know. But yeah, this time it had to be a dream.
It's really gorgeous.
Thank you.
Everybody should go and check out Essential Services. You'll find it on YouTube. And then I want to talk to you a bit about, you know, you're in the Liberties. You're there with your missus. Where's your missus from?
Cork. Idine's from Cork. She's yeah.
And is she an artist of?
She essentially, her whole family are artists, but none of them know it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I've, of course, fallen in love with your cats from the videos.
Seamus and Noah, yeah.
Oh, so which one is the youngest one?
Noah.
Well, because Noah is the absolute spitting image of our cat. Yeah. I have a 13-year-old Jack Russell who doesn't really do much these days. You know, he's gotten very old. But we got a cat in the first lockdown.
Oh, brilliant.
And I've so enjoyed having the cat. He's so much fun.
Their little personalities are great,
oh my
aren't
God,
they?
yeah.
And when they choose you, when they choose to, like, okay, now let's pet, let's, you know.
Yeah, and it's almost heartbreaking when you want it, you know, have
And
the
they
little
don't,
cuddle. And it's not his time. And, you know, it's almost heartbreaking. But when he decides to bestow that cuddle, oh my God,
it's so much more human. I think cats are a little bit more human than dogs. You know, it takes a couple,
regal. You know, like a particular kind of human. They are human, but they're blue bloods.
Right. You're dead right.
I think, yeah.
It's a bit more regal.
So you're living in the Liberties with the lovely wife and the lovely cats. And like a lot of creative people at the moment, you've had to get creative about being creative. And so one of the things I'm really enjoying is you've been making music videos in the house. I find that very charming. You get a sort of sense of you in a way. And one of the videos that you've made recently in the house in the Liberties is with the illustrious Rónán O Snodaigh for the song Tá'n Liom, Lucky Is Me. And we're very lucky because the illustrious Rónán is joining us for this. Hi Rónán.
How's it going?
I'm good.
We ready to go?
Yes,
cool to
take
go?
it away.
son. Bagan a brishet mo chrí an son. Bagan a lamnig me dan di lot son. Bagan a chas me mo chron. Vagabond. Bagan a ríslig me mo brí an son. Bagan a reg me mo year an son. Bagan a bris me mo real lach an son. Bagan a chas me mo chron. Vagabond. Nisan an rod a Horladam. Na vi an andam. Nisan an rod a vilet tmama choromsa. Bedagar av an talam. On talam. Anna sangalas makjan. Gobaram o hon. Nanestam. 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 Bagan a ríslig me mavri an son. Bagan a ravan I hasan a adadam. Bagan a ravan koggasan a herdam. Bagan a chas me machram. Vagabond. Bagan a ravan an hasan a adadam. Bagan a ravan I hasan a herdam. Bagan a ravan down an a chodn adam. Bagan a chas me machram. Vagabond. Nisan an rod a Horladam. Na vi an andam. Nisan an rod a vilet tmama choromsa. Bedagar av an talam. On talam. Anna sangalas makjan. Gobaram o hon. Nanestam. Nanestam. Nanestam.
Thank you. It's so gorgeous. It makes me happy in a melancholic way, if you get what I'm feeling. Rónán, yeah, it does, but you know what I mean? I think it might be a very Irish feeling. You know, melancholically sad.
What we enjoy.
Melancholically happy, I mean. Rónán, what's the song about? Because in the video, I have to say, you spoke so beautifully about it at the end that I actually wrote down what you said. And I don't do that often. So what is the song?
I suppose I feel like I got away with a lot of things. Maybe I was due to fall at a lot of hurdles, and somehow I didn't fall at them.
Yeah.
And I just mean in my life, or the way I lived my life. And I don't know if I was that responsible, that I was aware of how off the edge I had gotten, and something brought me back over the edge a few times. And if I look back, there's got to be someone else at the steering wheel sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful and maybe a bit belittled by how well I'm doing, considering how I was.
Yeah. It's a beautiful sentiment, because I'm not a religious person or whatever at all, but I can totally connect with that sentiment, that maybe you fell into grace, or that, you know, there was somebody or something else looking after you when you weren't even aware of it. And the song is recognising that. I like it. And also, Listen, if you haven't lived a life where at times there was hurdles you nearly came a cropper on, really was it a life worth living? That's part of my attitude. Ron, thank you so much for coming in and doing that. It was really
Thank you,
beautiful.
Myles.
And Myles, as always, that theremin accompaniment there. Gorgeous. Myles, as Indistinct Chatter, you have an album
Yes.
out now, and it's really all about your mother.
Yes, this one.
So, do you want to talk to me about that?
Just about feelings I had when I was a kid. It's the only thing in January I could rely on is like closing my eyes and memorizing moments in my childhood. And
Because your mother passed away
7 years ago,
7 years ago.
but I'm still traumatized. There's
Yeah,
no
of
doubt
course,
about
yeah.
it. Like it feels like yesterday. But being able to close one really bizarre thing, and I'm sure other people who have seen worlds disappear can do this. It's you love those. If you love those worlds, you can close your eyes and literally be there again. You know, I can close my eyes and be in my mother's house, and I can it's like VR. It's like a virtual reality experience, and I can do it on call. You know, I can be there. And so I thought, like, I'm going to close my eyes a lot in January and see. And while I'm doing that, play some stuff, just mess around with sounds and see which sounds resonate. So that's what this album is. There was a lot of stuff going on in the house. There's raindrops on our conservatory roof that last for 10 minutes in this album. You know, there's lakeshore sounds that last through songs, and not just that, but then the notes are really specific moods, and so I do choose like a combination of notes that's like a dinner you would have if you were at home, you know, with your mother's cooking notes, you know, so they go throughout it. And I just love those. I just love that I could do that, and I had the time. Like, I never would have had the time to do that otherwise. And it was very painful. There was a lot of like crying. There was a lot of like getting too close to the memory and bursting out into tears, and then feeling magnificent afterwards, and coming back to the song and something like the positivity of the memory was all that exists after the breakdown. So that music then just lifted the song to another level where it's a beautiful, sad thing. Just like we're saying about Rónán's song, it's a beautiful, sad thing. With all trauma, I think once you break down the sadness and the grief, and once you break those things down and digest them and let them go, what's left is very beautiful and beautiful memory.
But I mean, that's in a way that is what grief is.
Yeah.
Because in order to remember them, you have to remember them, and remembering them is what makes you feel the loss and the pain and the sadness.
Yeah.
But remembering is also what you want to do. So you have to have the tears to get the joy of it.
Yeah. I wish I had gone to counselling earlier, actually, you know, like after my mother died, straight after. And I advise anybody to do that because I had to figure it out and it took a bit longer. But yeah, exactly, that's what grief is. To do that as in a creative way, and to write your grief down. It could be, you could write down basically, you know, I'm so fucking sad, I've this, that, and that's happening, and what do I do about this? You go, right, that's therapeutic, just writing the words down, and maybe burning it ritualistically with a whiskey. Or playing music is the exact same thing, except you're not using words, you're just, the notes are writing it down, and when you listen back to it, you're listening back to yourself. You're listening back to an emotion specifically, not words that are, you're right. And then just to be able to listen to my songs where I was grieving, and for me to get bored with them even, I'm like, right, I'm actually past that now. You know? Yeah. This doesn't hurt me. This song doesn't hurt me anymore in the happy, sad way. Yeah. I'm numb to that now because maybe I've grown up. I've put my words down and I've burnt the paper.
The album is called My Mother's Star, and it is essentially a paean to your mother.
It is. I don't want people to feel like though that it's personal, and a lot of the feedback I've been getting is that it's, you know, it's playing to the stars. I'm not playing to my mother specifically. I'm playing to the stars.
Well, I mean, grief and mothers and all that are universal.
It's a universal
I mean,
thing.
all art is personal, and the personal is always universal. Is my motto about it.
Wow.
I mean, there isn't. The only things that are universal in life are the personal things: love, loss, grief, pain, happiness. I mean,
aren't they? Yet you feel very alone with them.
Yeah, I mean that's part of being human, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even surrounded by 8 billion other people, sometimes you feel alone, or you feel like you're the first person to have this experience.
And you have to figure it out yourself. And it's just, you're on your own path there, with some stuff.
And so, was the album healing?
I think.
Did you feel better after the process?
Yeah, I think it did. I felt better actually. I kind of spat it out. It was really quick to make. 1 month of just me whooshing, just spilling everything out, as have been the other albums in lockdown, just spilling and not caring and effortless. I have to say effortless, because I didn't think twice about the music, and listening back was the most therapeutic, because I listened back and I have to revisit the emotion I was pouring, and I'm glad that I'm bored of some of the songs now, basically. Yeah.
You're glad you're bored of them, yeah. I mean, you're an ideas man, aren't you? I mean, I feel just even sitting here that the ideas are bubbling out of you. Is part of the process deciding which ideas to work with, or some people are sitting there looking for an idea. I feel like you always have 10 ideas.
Yeah.
And there's no shortage of ideas. But sometimes the hard part is deciding which, ideas.
Yeah. And it can be the hardest part, I think. Well, I grew up with I chose creative friends, as who also have ideas. And what I noticed, the difference between me and them, and they're still my best friends, is that if I have an idea, I go and do it the next day, and I finish it, and I know what the feeling is of finishing an idea. And that really helps me, for some reason, going out and making things and setting them free. And I love that. And my friends never move past the idea,
God, yeah. I mean,
they have millions of
I'm in the
ideas
procrastinator group,
Yeah.
I wish I had more of that.
Well, I guess I'm lucky, and I need to acknowledge that I'm grateful for that. But sometimes I forget that maybe this is my little superpower, that I can come up with an idea and complete it. And that the reason why I choose it is because I know I can finish it. And maybe it's a little superpower. What I try and focus on is not to be, is universal, like you said. Always try and have an idea that everybody feels they can adopt as fully as I have, and feel the same lump in the throat as I do when I pick an idea, because I want it to make me cry. And if it doesn't, it gets left in the shelf. Not for too long, because I figure out how it's going to make me cry.
Yeah.
And then and the best compliment in the world is that made me cry.
I totally agree with that. I used to be one of those people, whatever, I would be embarrassed to cry at a movie or something, when I was a teenager or whatever. And nowadays, if I'm not crying, I want to be crying, because that means it's affecting me, or it's brought up something, or whatever.
Maybe it's growing into life and growing into maturity. We actually value feeling things, don't we?
Yes, and knowing what you want to feel, and knowing what your superpower is.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I look at these, people who become very successful at 20 in a band or whatever, and I think how hard that must be, because I don't think anybody knows at 20 exactly what their superpower is. They've stumbled in a way onto something, but then you have to do it again. And how many people at 20 know, how to turn on the thing that's special about them?
Yeah.
Again,
It doesn't happen really. People get lost in the course of their lives, and lives become regimental, and they never. I think it's a thing that you find later in life, maybe, that you can point out, to yourself.
I feel very much more of myself now than I did when I was 20.
Yeah.
And you actually described your sort of creative process as beautifully as being sort of like a tree.
I love the tree analogy, but the growth and the nurture. When you say when A&R in record labels, when record labels were real, the A&R philosophy was nurture the growth of the artist.
And actually, maybe when I think about your analogy of the tree, what I was sort of getting at about not knowing your superpowers in 20 is to do with that rooted thing that you get when you're older. You know exactly who you are and where you are. You're rooted on, on your own ground, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with age. I mean,
It comes with age. It's like be a big, strong, proud oak tree, The more you grow, the more roots you have, and the more connectivity and the more influence you have on your environment, even though you mightn't be aware that you're the giant of the field. You're supplying this. You're supplying this 1,000 species of insects living on your skin, and you're supplying their world, and you might not ever feel that you're a big, strong, proud tree, but you are the more you mature.
Sometimes I think it's good to have an animal, a cat, whatever it is, that is entirely roots, if you know what I mean.
Oh my God, isn't it brilliant?
That they know exactly what they are.
No bullshit.
They have no bullshit. There's no ideas above their stations. They know what they're for.
Yeah.
They know where they are, and it sometimes just reminds you, yes, I'm here to eat and shit too.
Yeah. My cat, Noah, who appears in the video with Rónán, every morning he's the first to get up to the cat flap, and we open it up and we let him out, and he goes out, he takes a shit, and then he looks up, and if there's a bit of sunlight, he'll go and do mindfulness in the corner of the garden. And it's literally mindfulness, because he looks for the sun, he points his head towards it, he closes his eyes, and he's doing something, and we know it's just like he's grounding. He's this is a cat.
I think that's a cat thing, because
the most cat, important thing.
He sits up on the desk, and he just sits in that cat pose, sitting up. And sits there for 20 minutes after breakfast. Just dead still.
Just loves it. Just appreciate, just being. Like Eddie and Elsie in the Crowded House and my neighbours. Just be.
Can I ask you one last question that's just, it's always hard to answer, but are you happy?
Yeah, I'm extremely happy. I do have my worries. And I think the creative process, actually, my life day to day is I'm very happy, and if I have a creative process, I make myself unhappy and insecure and unsure, because it's the only way. The challenge then of those constraints is the only way I can actually begin a project. And we were talking like beginning is the hardest thing to do, but I'm like, all right. Essentially, my default mode is absolutely blissed out. I could live on a beach in Thailand now and not do anything with my life and be happy to die there.
Could you?
Yeah.
Without any projects?
Without any projects. So I guess I could.
Well, so what's next?
I think I don't have a clue. What I would really love to do is play more music, but also film, and so just to somehow create the projects that I'm filming through some kind of collaboration with performing myself, I guess. Before Werner Herzog, there was Ry Cooder,
Oh, yeah.
And Ry Cooder he's documented a lot of his collaborations all over the world. And I'm kind of looking at him, and Dan Lanois as well, who make these amazing films about making music, but they also have beautiful universal messages in them, and they carry a lot of culture, and they carry a lot of importance and motivation and everything.
Well, one thing I'm certain of, whatever it is you're doing next, it'll be interesting, Myles. And if anyone wants to find more Myles, you have a great website.
Arbutus Yarns is the name of my website, and it's a little Netflix of music. Yeah,
there's a lot of spell Arbutus.
Arbutus, the Arbutus tree, Arbutus Yarns. But my name, if you just Google me anyway, there's plenty there.
Well, thanks a million, Myles. I said earlier at the beginning that I couldn't believe I hadn't met you before. Yeah. And I'm really glad I have. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a real pleasure. So.
It's really been a pleasure to sit with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lisa Hannigan playing us out. Thanks, Myles. That really was really fun. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So I just don't talk like to anyone. So
you wouldn't know it.